since we have some time, Jeff, I think this is kind of like a cool show for this weekend.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask you a question on marriage and success, goals, all that good stuff, okay? So I'm married, you're married.
Yep.
You've been married a lot longer.
Yep.
And you have a successful marriage with 7 kids, okay? So what would you say on marriage? The key on marriage and success, how can they relate together?
Well, the first thing I would say is that marriage for me is probably the most important part of being successful, because if you don't have a successful marriage, you can make all the money in the world and your house will be torn in half. So first, recognizing that marriage is important. A lot of people don't teach marriage, right? That's not what we're seeing on TV. Oh, so-and-so is being honored today because of their successful marriage, right, or because of the great parenting that they've done. So you gotta recognize that marriage is kind of an undergirding, kind of the foundation structure of the family unit. And the family unit is the foundation of success in this country and any other country. And secondly, once we recognize that marriage is the foundation, the cornerstone of success, you recognize that there's no way you're going to go through 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 or 30 years of marriage without offenses. There's going to be offenses. People are going to be offended. He's going to be offended about something. She's going to be offended about something. And to try to avoid those offenses is impossible. They're going to happen. But what's the plan? God's plan for offenses is forgiveness. So if we recognize we can get through offenses because of forgiveness, but they're going to happen, so it's okay. So people a lot of times think if they're fighting, especially newly married couples, oh, we had our first fight. Mm-hmm. You know, fighting is, as my wife always says, Princess Jessica, fighting is communication. Where you want to really kind of open your eyes and say something's wrong is if there's no communication whatsoever. So fighting is a form of communication. It's one party saying to the other party, hey, this falls below whatever standard we've set in our marriage, and as a result, there needs to be a change happening. That's okay. Both parties in the marriage ought to have the opportunity to say that. But if you're just going around offended all the time and there's no forgiveness, there's no clearing of the relationship, then it builds up, it builds into tension, and sometimes that tension can be just catastrophic to the marriage. So the only rule that Jessica and I have, we have a value and we have a philosophy that says that success monetarily comes from being part of a successful community. Being part of a successful community means you have a strong family foundation. Strong family foundation means you have a strong marriage foundation. Yep. And so that's kind of the cornerstone, that's the value. And then the only rule that Jessica and I have is you don't go to bed mad, ever. If you got an offense that's bothering you, something that's eating at you and making one party or the other party upset, you got to clean it up before you go to bed. The Bible says, do not let the sun go down, S-U-N, do not let the sun go down on your wrath or on your anger. And I think that's a great rule. That's the rule that's allowed me to be happily, successfully married for 22 years. Jessica and I both adhere to that rule, and we call each other out. Hey, are you offended? You sound like you might be offended. And we recognize that I'm not the enemy, Jessica's not the enemy. The offense is the enemy. Yeah. So when we clear the offense and we clear the air and we go to bed when we're not mad, that allows us to wake up the next morning grateful, thankful, like David Meltzer talks about. Yes. With gratefulness when you go to bed and gratefulness when you wake up. And we do that. We practice that. We practice gratefulness religiously, as silly as that might sound. But that's how we do it, and that's how we've been able to raise our children and continue to work both parties, both horses pulling the cart the same direction.
That's awesome, and I'm very happy that early on in this journey, my marriage is important to me, and one of the things is my health. And then my marriage as well. I want those things to work. Yeah. I don't want to be like a successful business owner, for example, and then like my marriage is going to hell. So I really don't consider that, myself, and Jeff, we don't consider that a successful life, probably. Right?
Well, you can have a successful life even if your marriage falls apart. Yeah. but it's going to be a whole lot more work.
Yeah.
A whole lot more work. And you can have success because it's based on your definition, right? So success is arbitrary. If success is making a lot of money and your marriage falls apart, you can still be successful.
For that person, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the way that Jessica and I set it up was that, you know what? We want it all. We want to have a happy marriage. We want to be best friends. We want to have a great love life. We want to have a great child raising life. We want to have a great finance life. And oh my goodness, I might get a lot of credit publicly for the success that our family has enjoyed financially and in business. But Jessica is absolutely there every single step of the way. Raising the kids, taking care of the kids, changing diapers, feeding kids, going to the grocery store, making meals, cleaning house, getting kids to sporting activities, and supporting me when my career's gone up and gone down. So I don't take any credit for the success that we have separate or apart from giving credit to my wife, because she's been there from the time that we lived on, $1,500 a month. That's the truth. Jessica is 50% of any success that we enjoy. 100% believe that, because we built it from the beginning. She didn't marry a public figure. She didn't marry an Instagram YouTuber. She married a guy that worked at an auto parts store for $8 an hour. And she helped me become what people see on camera today, and I helped her become what the children see as a great mother and what I have as a great wife.
That's awesome. So I some people are like, I want to have a great marriage, but I think the easiest way to do that has worked for me is get around people that have great marriages, 20, 30, 40 years.
Totally
like
agree.
You.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I had three guys, Mitch Arjavac, Dave Eggers, and Dennis Delisle, who stood in the gap for me and showed me. They weren't going out of their way to show me. They just modeled what having a great marriage looked like. They were faithful to their wives. They were faithful to their children. They taught me about the traps and things that were guys that travel, and I travel all the time. Guys that travel, some of the traps that they get into and how to get out of those traps and how to steer clear of those traps. So watching them for probably 7, 8, 9 years, it just became, and for 2 of those years, it was before I got married. So I had the modeling before we actually got to the point where we pulled the trigger and Jessica and I met and got married. And I mean, I owe those guys my life, and we'll be tagging them in this video, because Alan Gilson, Christopher Johnson, Dennis Delisle, Dave Eggers, and Mitch Arjavac were the absolute backbone of the example that I watched, seeing what a successful marriage looked like, because I didn't have that example in my own home.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jeff Heilman on marriage.